Do you have any skills as a developer or coder?
Very minimal. I know HTML, a little bit of Java. When I in high school, I went to a technical high school and I did C++. I majored in computer science, all that kind of stuff. And I, I had a bad experience. Me and my teacher didn't get along, and I was just too young and too weird. And my teacher, I don't know, it was just not an ideal situation.
Yeah, it's
And
not for everybody too.
oh yeah, I remember I was one of our senior projects was to build Tetris, and everybody was having a hard time with it. And then my lab partner like said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna fail the class anyway, so I'm not doing this project." And so I got left with the project by myself, and I just was trying to do the best I can, just so I could pass the class. And I remember staring at like thousands of lines of code for hours and hours, and looking for a fucking semicolon. And I just had like this whole like Office Space moment, like I want to break this computer. I'm like, I can't see my whole life being this. Which is funny because I originally wanted, like, my vision when I went in and said, because freshman year you tried different technologies in my school. So yeah, I took like graphics, we had material science, we had like a design class, and then computer science. And so you do like construction. There's all sorts of different things you can do at the school that you major in. You take your core classes, but then you had a major. And so I was like computer science because I graduated in '02. So at this time, the computer science course was new, and everybody was just like, this is going to be the thing and all this kind of stuff. So I got into it and I was like, I'm going to do websites and I'm going to do this and do that. And for the first 3 years, we didn't even touch the websites. We were just doing C++ and like hardcore fucking coding. I was like, oh, when are we going to play? Like, I wanted to do fun stuff. Like, this is just like killing my soul. And then I just, which, looking back in my life, it was kind of a good thing. Kind of like I never really handled the situation, but you're young, you learn. I eventually learned, but I totally went opposite. Like in college, after I graduated, I was like, "Fuck computers." I got into liberal arts, and was like anti-computers. I even have this idea of some sci-fi novel. It's called The Paper Bums, and this guy to like keep his humanity writes on paper and like does none of his like real thoughts on the computer because the AI watches it and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
but that's how I
feel
felt.
that's happening.
Yeah, that's how I felt even early on in that stage. I was like, oh, I don't want to use the computer. Like I just went totally opposite. I was like, fuck computers. I would like spend my time in the library with like a real book and writing on real paper and just being like, and I used to like hate social media. I only used it to talk to my friends, but I always trip out because I used to work at a school for my part-time job, running the after-school care and doing homework with kids. And I just started to see these kids change and like they would like go like hashtag this or like and like say stuff. I was like, dude, those are not even real words. Like, what are you guys doing? You bunch of weirdos.
Yeah.
And I was just totally anti that. And it wasn't until a little later, like seriously, I mean, until I got onto Minds, like before that, I didn't see the possibility. I don't know. I tagged you in this recent one that I did is called Operation Mindfuck. The Internet is Acid, and it's like these clips of Douglas Rushkoff and Are You Serious? But there's one point in when Douglas Rushkoff says the original strand of cyberpunk ethos, where envision technology and media as a way to express, not repress, human creativity. And like we're still here. And when he said that, I was like, dude, that's exactly how I feel. Like, that's me. Because, I mean, I got into... I used to actually help Are You Serious do these interviews. And I did a couple of music videos for him. just editing, just real weird stuff that I did, and I've facilitated a couple of interviews with him and Douglas Rushkoff. It's funny because that was just my secret plan. Like, okay, this is how I feel about this, and I really like looking at the landscape right now. I'm really resonating with Rushkoff's voice, and I'm like paying homage to what Are You Serious was doing in Mondo 2000, and when Terrence McKenna was saying that the internet is going to be the global mind, and everything they were doing there. Somewhere we lost it, and it's like, can we you have a renaissance of that vision again? And I'm like, dude, we can. And every time things got weirder on Minds, and not a good weird, in a bad weird, as far as content, I just felt more like digging in, no, and not in a combative way. Just I am even more committed to doing my weird art, and and I mean, I only say this, and I don't usually try to not broadcast this just because how I see things, but there was this initial wave after 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, maybe now it's 2 years, but anyways, when people were getting banned from Twitter and YouTube initially, the initial after Trump got elected, and then there was this full wave of alt-right people, and I mean, prior to that, we had crazy people. We had crazy people of all different ideology, we had racist people, we had crazy hackers, we had druggies, we had all sorts of crazy people.
God bless them.
Yeah, and it was fine because there was a good, nice ecosystem of crazy people. But then it's just we had this onslaught of this particular type of ideology. And they just...
How would you define that?
For lack of a better word, it's alt-right, I guess. And then, whatever. Yeah. But they wanted to start to brand Minds as alt-right. And I'm like, no. I was like, it should be nothing. It should be... Some of my earlier stuff that I would like to broadcast would be I don't want hive mind. I want a mosaic of minds. I want you guys to be you, and it's fine that we're all different, but in a weird, odd way, we could all fit these pieces together and create something better,
Yeah, Max said something really interesting. One time I was kind of complaining to him. I said, I'm getting bored of Minds because I'm just seeing political memes, and it's just who's even on here who's saying anything with humanity or individuality. And what he said is well, they're actually helpful because the people who are really creating stuff, their content just shines through, it just contrasts so well amongst the myriad of bullshit, so that in a way that it's they're doing us a favor. The bots and the trolls and the hive minded, they're somehow we're benefiting from them. A cool perspective.
Yeah, and there's something too that Rushkoff says in his little rant, and he's in the failure of the digital the digital economy, and it's been a failure. That in its failure, we are looking at it as fertilizer for these new ideas. And when you go back to, I think, some of the better metaphors to look at life and to look at even when you analyze yourself is everything, you have to have that kind of things degrade and die off to give birth to new life, fertilizer,
right? The mycelium.
Yeah. And there's a period of where things digress and break down only to give energy and renewal to the new dawn. And that's just how things work,
Yeah. One thing I saw was an article that, I just read the headline, of course, but it was that there's artificial intelligence text bots that are writing whole articles, typically on pop culture or politics, that are designed to be somewhat outrageous or contentious or divisive. And I wonder if we're moving to a place where we just stop trusting text. And I see a renaissance of scribbles of like, what can a computer not do and what can a human do very well, which I think is just like to think on paper. And I see that as like a really interesting way to distinguish like what we can truly call real. Because some people there's bots, and then there's people who are just behaving like bots.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, because for one thing, it's for each individual, but I remember just recently someone invited me into some group, and she's like, "Oh, be aware of bots. They could be tricky." And like, "Oh, don't worry, no bot's gonna catch me slipping." I was like, I couldn't recognize bots, like, but what really concerns me is what you were kind of saying is people behaving like bots. Like, oh my god, that's even scarier. But like even people in real life acting like bots. Like, oh my god, that's even scarier. Yeah.
One thing Bill said is that they're not really trying to eliminate the bots or to combat the bots. They're trying to train the bots. And I don't really understand what that means, but I think it's a like really fascinating thing. It's like if you try to delete the account of every bot, that's just like probably you won't be able to keep up. But if you can identify bot behavior and channel it in ways that just like make it less interfering of true collaboration, like we can do that. We can figure it. We can outsmart that system.
Definitely. That line that I put on Mac's post is the logos can't understand Blake, and that's like the central premise of my weird sci-fi story that I hopefully eventually I've written some of it, but that I'll work more towards. And so the logos is the super AI that takes over everything. Right. And the whole point of it is that the guy writes his true thoughts on paper, but he also adds an extra encryption that he writes it in poetry because the AI can't understand Blake. Right. And that's like the thing. It's like there's no way and what we're talking about, like what makes us human, right? What makes us different, and it's our imagination, is our creativity. Yeah, there is, of course, there's always technique and things that can be quantified in a logical sense. You know, like when you're drawing right now, you do circles, but they're not perfect circles, and all these different tools that we learn, but it doesn't have that weirdness, that unique perspective of how you do it in that given time, in that relative time to the whole relative to you in that given moment of all your life. You know, like if you really think about it, like how we get and express the way we are and the way we do things is because of this whole compiling of our whole life, of our whole experience. The reason why I do certain things is because I got exposed to these different influences. And I remember when I got onto Minds, I was like, oh, now all my useless knowledge, like I have a use for it. like all the books that I read on Terrence McKenna and all the weird music I used to listen to. Like, oh, okay. Yeah. I remember, and I was like, finally, like my rare knowledge came into some use. Like, oh, I remember reading, I forgot what was it, the Serpent and the Rainbow. That was about voodoo in Haiti. Like, finally, that weird obscure book that I read once came in handy. But I think about that like all the time now, where that gives me my certain bent on like how I see things and what words I use and what things I like to play with, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.